Hello and welcome back to Frank Film Club. This week we're going to be talking about She Said, which is a film that got released late last year, 2022, and it was written by Rebecca Lenkiewicz and directed by Maria Schrader, based on the book She Said, which was based on the article written by Jodi Kantor and Twohey, and they also wrote the book. It stars Carey Mulligan, who plays Twohey, and Zoe Kazan, who plays Jodi Kantor. But first of all, before we get into everything, how are you both?
Yeah, really good. I've been having a wonderful time learning how to crochet. Yeah. I've always wanted to do it, so I've just been making like little squares at the moment, but eventually want to make hats.
Nice.
Because it's so cold right now. We all need some nice crocheted hats.
Yeah.
Can I have one?
Absolutely.
Great.
You have to pick your colours though, because like I never know what colour combinations to do, so just let me know. Black.
Yeah.
And red. Perfect.
Okay, great. Well, fab.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Love it.
What about you?
Yeah.
What have you been up to?
Also creative. Pottery.
No, you haven't.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've been making some mugs,
You've been making mugs?
but one of them leaks, so it's not that good.
Oh.
But I'm learning, so it's fine.
Hairline fracture. Wait.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what they call it, right?
I think
Hairline?
so.
Hairline?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Amazing.
hairline fractures, I've been filling in a leak in the window in the van, a hairline leak.
They use hairline for everything.
Yeah, apparently that's a
Wow.
word that people use.
Wow.
So
My goodness. You need to put some of that on your leaky mug.
Oh yeah, you do. I've actually, it does say ceramics. You can use it for ceramics. This
Great.
thing.
I'll come
send it
round.
over.
We'll meet somewhere in the middle with your van and with my mugs.
Yeah.
And compare.
And with the crocheting.
And I'll just crochet in the corner.
Great.
Great day out. Can't
Oh, I
wait.
love
God, I
that.
love it when all of our up-tos have combined.
I know.
Yeah.
How good. We've all been so creative.
So good. What we like.
Please for us.
Well, very glad to hear that you're both doing well and both being very creative, I must say. Let's get into it.
Yeah.
So, I chose She Said.
Yeah.
I think I first watched it at BFI London Film Festival a few months back, and I was like, oh my God, we need to talk about this film because it left me in tears. And so I really want to know about your viewing experience and just like your initial thoughts on the film. What did you think?
Well, I watched it on my own, on my laptop, and I knew sort of top line. I mean, ever since you've seen it, you've been saying like we have to do it on Film Club, and so I knew, like I knew a little bit like what it was going to be about, the themes and stuff. I felt like I asked lots of like precursors, like, are we going to see him? Are we going to? And you were like, no, like it's just like really important the way it's handled. And I thought it was like an incredible film. Like I thought it, like I learned so much about this story. I learned like how this story was like covered up, and I guess I just found it like it was like it's just like an important like it was almost like a documentary in a sense. Like it's just an important thing to know and to understand, and like it was like explored so much like in the media, but like understanding how stories like this break and like what journalists have to do and like, you know, why you don't hear about these stories sooner, I found like really impactful. But then I also will say, like, if I'm going to like take it like away from it being based on a real story and like the real people that it involves, if I'm going to just look at it as a movie which is dealing with like real things, I think I am not like a biggest fan of like the style and of just like the creative. And I have like examples of films that deal with really big things like this that are real life that I did like the creative of. So it's not because like, oh, they were telling something that was real, so it shouldn't be about that. In my opinion, I think like you can always do something that's like, I like things that are very stylistic and I didn't find that. And it's a choice, but not my preference.
No, I'm really looking forward to talking about that. And I wonder how they balance that with how much they wanted to do and not and take away from the story potentially, or whether that was a question.
Exactly.
But I absolutely agree with you. I watched half of this film at BFI London Film Festival because I had to leave. Really annoyingly, but then obviously watched the whole thing then at home. Well, the thing that was really special about watching it at the BFI was that it was all industry people, and it felt like, I don't know, it felt like there was a tension. I don't know whether I was just feeling it.
Interesting, so interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think I would have been so affected by it had I not been in an audience of people who work in that industry. Wow. I think that felt like, I was like weeping at the end, and that doesn't really happen very much with films.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. I felt like I was going that way, and then I left. It really was halfway through, because when I rewatched it, I wasn't feeling the same emotions as I was feeling when I was in the cinema watching it. And I am a crier, as you know, and I didn't cry too much.
Yeah.
A little bit, but not too much. But yeah, I'm just excited to speak about everything.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously this film is based on something that is quite a recent history. This article was released was like put out to the world in 2017, so it was like its 5-year anniversary, I think, when this film is. So it is kind of soon for it to be having to like be making a film about something that is such recent history. I wonder your thoughts on that, and like, is it important that we look at this right now and remember it?
I would say yes, and I wouldn't make that statement about everything that's based on a real story. I think, like, depending on whether it's like a biopic about someone who's like recently passed, like, I feel like there's sort of questions around whether or not that should happen like sooner or like later, you know. But with something like this, it depends whether or not the victims feel comfortable speaking about it now, or having this like blown up now. Anyone who was named and like was like directly linked to like a real person rather than like, you know.
Yeah.
So it's basically all about how they feel. But I mean, in terms of like the way this reflects on Harvey Weinstein and him still being here, I think is important. And I think, like, for us as people who are creating businesses in this industry, like right now, and like understanding like the foundations that like things have been built on in the past, and like the sorts of like just like shocking and awful ways that people have been treated before, like I think it's like really important to understand that. Like, I just think it's really important for us to understand and know that, and I think this movie does a really good job of like even unveiling like the article, which was already an unveiling of sorts.
Yeah.
Because like I learned so much more.
When I saw the trailer, I said that I thought it was too soon. But I think the thing about watching this now and the time that it's out is that you can watch something like this and feel disgusted and shocked and appalled by like what has happened, but say that wasn't even that long ago.
I know, yeah.
So it feels really archaic, but I think it's important for us to like realise that even though things are like moving in the right direction, things that are really bad aren't that long ago, and there's things going on right now, especially in America, for women and their bodies, that is, and across the world, in Iran, everywhere, that is, we think that everything is getting so much better, but it's like almost we're going in reverse in some ways. So I think it's really important to highlight, I found that impactful to think this wasn't even that long ago. And this could have been one of us in the industry.
Truly.
When something is made into a film, it does kind of like make it a bit of like a that's there forever then, like it's a time capsule of that moment of what did happen, and it kind of does just make sure that people are going to remember this story and see this story because ultimately, like, it was already a book and it is an article, but I do think that films are more accessible to a wider audience, and so just to like solidify that that this did happen. Megan and Jodi were very heavily involved in this, so it's they wrote the article. They then wrote the book as well, she said, which the film is then based on. And they worked with the director, Maria, and they worked with Carey Mulligan and Zoe Kazan quite heavily as well. So it is quite true, not scene by scene. There are certain things that were like compressed into certain scenes just to like make it a bit more cinematic, but like the general feel and like what the film leaves you with is all true.
And like the timeline
I think also true. It was actually shot in the New York Times offices, which is the first time that they've ever done that for a feature film.
Wow. How did they do that?
Because of COVID.
Oh,
so
of course.
So no one was in there.
That
they
makes
managed
sense.
Got in for 2 weeks.
There's like there's that scene where Megan is speaking with one of Harvey's lawyers, but the cafeteria is like entirely empty.
Yeah.
They shot it during COVID.
Yeah. But yeah, because that is quite a big thing then, really, because I feel like it's very true to like the investigative nature of the film. Like it's very Spotlight. Have you both seen Spotlight?
Yes.
Like it is
I'm
very...
so glad you brought that up.
Yeah. Like it really is that kind of vibe.
Totally.
But I completely agree with what you were saying earlier, that it's not particularly stylish or cinematic like I absolutely love it for the story, but I would never use an image from this film as a reference for a film that I wanted to make. Not because it looked awful, but it just didn't look like particularly exciting.
That's very true. I also was thinking of Spotlight when I was watching this because it feels very thorough, and that you have to fit a lot into it to like do it justice and tell the truth of it. But I found the pacing of this film a lot more digestible than Spotlight. I thought Spotlight was a lot, and I was like, I didn't find it as enjoyable of a watching experience. But I do feel like it felt more like the feeling of watching a documentary, like the way that it brings up conversations. It's just that type of viewing experience. Do you like Spotlight?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you not?
You don't like
It's one of those ones. It's like The King's Speech for me. I tried. It's very different from The King's Speech, but it's one of those films that I've tried to watch a lot of times, and I've just not been in the right headspace to watch it, and then I've just turned it off.
The King's Speech.
It's just so much dialogue.
Yeah, I completely. I feel like we align most of the time, so I'm just like very, very interested because I completely hear what you're saying, but I never found it with those two, even though I know that we have very similar viewing experiences a lot of time. I mean, we all do. Yeah.
Well, I need to give
Best
them
Picture, which is kind of like surprising in lots of ways. Yeah, it's kind of. Yeah.
Is that one of the films that you meant earlier? That stylistically?
Yeah, I thought like they deal with something that's very real, that's recent history with real people. It's from the journalist perspective. You involve like survivors, victims, stories as well. But I found it also to like stand alone, be like, I thought everyone tonally was like telling the story in the same way. Whereas, and that way it was like, there's just lots of different styles to acting and to like dialogue. And some things are written and some things are like improvised, and it gives two different effects, you know, and I feel like in Spotlight, this is going to sound so stupid, it is like a movie. But she said it's like way more sort of documentary feel at times, and then at times not. That's what I found. I was like, where am I supposed to sit? Like, what is the style? Are we trying to be authentic to real life? In which case, I don't buy that line of dialogue. Are we trying to, like, be a movie or in a dramatized retelling? In which case, like, that's incredibly naturalistic and it's making me feel like maybe you are the real person, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Were there any particular lines and things that stood out?
When they're talking with their boss about, like, whether or not they can write the story. Yeah. I just feel quite so sensitive to, like, the style of something.
Yeah.
To, like, how it feels to like watch.
That's very
Yeah.
fair enough.
But I still thought like this is like, you know,
Yeah.
I learned so much, and I thought it was just like really important. And I want people to watch it, so I don't want that to like take people out of it. you know?
Yeah.
No, I think that's a really, really good observation. And you know as well, because you know what that feels like to be the other side of it, probably more
It's
than we
true,
would.
Yeah, a little. Yeah, when you're like, what? I always, that's like my first question always with the director. I'm like, so what like type of film are we making? Like, what is the vibe?
Yeah.
And sometimes like they don't know when the vibe comes at the end, and you're like, oh, but then it's like I would have done everything differently if I'd have known that this is how it was gonna feel. Because I don't want to take anyone out of whatever it is that whatever magic we're building. Because at the end of the day, like the story is really important, but if people are thrown out of it for different reasons, then is it a good move? Yeah, is it a good movie?
There are a few moments that are like definitely true to what happened.
Yeah.
And so I want to know if any of those moments were actually ones that pulled you out of it.
Ooh.
Ah.
I've
Okay.
only got 3 here.
Yeah.
But
like
one,
actual moments.
these
that happened.
actually were real things that happened and were also in the film. One, which isn't a massive moment, is when I think Weinstein's lawyer, or maybe it's Weinstein actually in the film, is talking on the phone and he's like going on and on and on and on and on, and then
We've been doing this for an hour and a half.
then he's like cut the shit,
Yeah.
and like that actually did happen and they just cut him off and were like meh,
Love that.
which is kind of cool.
Yeah. I
Love
mean,
it.
that
Yeah.
felt like a real moment.
Good.
Great.
I'm glad. Another one was when Ashley Judd called Jodi
Mm-hmm.
and said she'll go on the record,
And she cried.
and she cried.
Wow.
She broke down in front of everybody. That was
yeah.
real.
I thought that moment. Yeah.
That
felt real.
That was big.
Oh, sorry, the journalist cried.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. When Megan ran through the newsroom to the boss, Rebecca,
Mm-hmm.
and told her really good news about like having found the number of settlements that were paid by Weinstein.
Oh yeah.
And then they just like have a big hug.
Yeah. It wasn't any of those moments. So.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah. I don't want to speak about any of the moments.
I really
But
want to
anyway.
know.
Yeah, I'm so intrigued.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The journalists kind of speak about how hard Harvey Weinstein would work to shut down the stories, follow people. Did Jodi and Megan, like, were they really sort of threatened in that way by Harvey's team? Like, what was
Yeah.
that like for them? Like, have they spoken up much about that? I mean, it's in the film, but yeah.
Yeah, I think they definitely were pressured and advised not to do it, and like I can't think if it was Jodi or Megan, but one of them, someone from Harvey's team came and was like they were a Jew, and she is also a Jew, and they were like used that, and they were like from Jew to Jew.
Right. I think they
Don't
said
do
that in the
it.
movie.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. So that was true.
Yeah.
And like just like really
Yeah.
try to manipulate them and like make them not do it.
Awful.
You know, out of court settlements.
Yeah.
Is that something that happens in the UK as much as it does over there?
I feel like it happens. Yeah.
What is the rule? Like, where is the moral code?
I don't think there's a
I
moral
don't
code
think
to
there
it.
is
I think
that
that's
code
the
to it,
problem.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
But so much of the justice system is like that. It's like bail or like whatever. Like just, it's like,
If you can afford it, then okay.
yeah, literally like that's so bizarre.
Yeah, that's so backwards.
Yeah. Because it's supposed to like not be like that, right? It's supposed to be like the law's the law.
Yeah.
It's,
Can't
yeah.
run from the law. And he's in jail and he's not going to get out ever.
I think the case is still going. I think it's
Oh,
still
right.
going.
Yeah,
but
because
he
I
is in
was
jail.
as I was watching it, right after I was watching it, I just was like Googling as you do, like, you know, just like everything. But the trial's still going. They're still having hearings. And
Actually, I think I heard that the jury had been told not to watch this film because they were worried that it would sway their opinions.
yeah.
So yeah, it's still going, which is ridiculous. Okay, so speaking of old Harvey,
Oh, yeah.
what were your thoughts on how much we see him in this film?
I thought it was done quite well. I didn't know how they were going to play it. I actually think they could have just used his voice and it would have felt right. But I did think that whoever that double was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what was really good about using his voice, and obviously he was a voice actor for the phone calls, but was that shot of the hotel hallway.
Oh yeah.
And the actual recording of that the woman that secretly recorded for the police. I thought that was really interesting, and then that with his voice, and I think it would have been great if it was just his voice. It sort of made it a little bit more movie, like not to see him like walking through the lobby and all that stuff when it's a double. I don't know. How did you feel?
I thought it was. I mean, I was just really glad that they didn't show him very much. But that is true. They could have just not shown him at all, and just had his voice.
Although I really, really liked that shot of like zooming in on Carey Mulligan.
Yeah.
How she's looking at him.
That's true.
I thought, because that was what it was for, right? It wasn't for like whether or not we show him. It was about how she views him, and she just like the fact that none of it was going to like affect her no matter what they said, how hard she just had got to like a level where she was like you know like I don't see like none of the manipulation like or whatever, you know, and she looks right through him. And I thought, because like breaking this story, like this is a man who's been protected by everyone, by the police, like, and it's so easy for us to go, oh, like, you know, and they broke it, like, well done then. It must have been terrifying to know all of that. And, like, when they were saying, like, we may never be able to... And I think that it just really showed, like, how powerful Harvey was at that point. Like, we look at him now and we go, you know? But, like, he would use every resource he had to, like, stop. He did. He used every... And so I think it was a powerful moment for this woman who is, like... being completely harassed by 3 really powerful people, and just like, you know that she's like gonna do what she knows is right. And yeah, I thought that was, it just showed the stakes at that point. Yeah, because for our experience, we're like, horrible guy, never met him, never would want to, and now he's going to be in prison. But that wasn't people's reality for the majority of their lives. Like, he was untouchable and unstoppable, you know. And so I think in that moment, you know,
Yeah, agree. That's a very valid point, and I think for that reason, I'm glad that they
and for that reason, I've changed my mind.
Yeah,
because that's such a shot. Oh definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, similarly to that, what were your thoughts on the lack of showing any of the awful experiences that people had to go through? So Maria, director, when asked about her, like, whether she was going to show, like, what her choice in not showing any of the abusive scenes, she said that there didn't need to be any more depictions of assault in a film or female nudity, because we don't need any more of that, and we don't need to see any more violence against women. Like, we see enough of it, and people get so obsessed with trying to understand why villains become villains and obsessing over their story, and she was just like, that the narrative needs to change and not be about the perpetrator anymore. So, go Maria.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agree.
Yeah. Fair play, Maria.
Yeah.
In comparison to something like Blonde.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I thought that the recounts of the story were like so painful to listen to. And I'm really glad that it was just told in that way. Like, that's the way that the journalists would have like experienced it. And I think it's like so awful to, you know, it's impactful. You understand how awful it was for them, and no one has to be put in a situation that's like traumatic or could be traumatic or whatever. And I also think the performances at that point, like how people told those stories, it sounds messed up, but I think it's so important that that's done right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, like, yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. Not not in the, like, the way it's written or, like, whatever, but it's, like, overperformed or you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it wasn't.
No.
I think it was just, like, those were the moments that I literally just would, like, look away from the screen and just be, like, just cold. I don't know how to explain it any other way than just, like, really cold throughout my whole core, where you're just, like, just so, like, in so much pain for these women, you know?
Yeah.
I think those were really, really great scenes for how much space they gave
Yeah.
for them to tell that story, whatever story it was. There's something that talking about performance of the real stories, is how they decided who was gonna, or rather how they approached people like Ashley Judd, and what that process was like.
Yeah. So Ashley Judd was already heavily attached to the article, and then therefore was like involved with the book as well. So she was attached to the project from the get-go. However, her involvement, like her actually being in the film playing herself, wasn't a given. So Maria Schrader, she's German. She lives in Berlin, I believe. And she was there, and Ashley Judd happened to be there at the same time. It was during COVID, so you couldn't really travel that much. So luckily they got to meet in person, and they were chatting all about the film, the story, and then Ashley Judd, like, by the end was just like, so we're going to do this together, right? And then Maria was like, yeah. And then she was like, okay, I'll be in it, I'll do it, and I'll be me. And then Maria was obviously like, this is your stage, you decide how you want to tell your story, and you portray yourself how you want to be portrayed, and then that's how it was.
For performance, I wonder if she gave her that much flexibility to, like, do what she wants to do with the story. I wonder if Ashley Judd, if that was scripted for her, or if she just not improvised, because, you know, if she, how planned out it was.
I'm not entirely sure, but I have seen her saying about how on some takes she was like, I just expanded on the story so much, and she would just go for it. So I kind of think it might have been her just telling the story. Maybe she had certain beats that she had to hit, but it was definitely just her telling her story in that moment. And then I don't know so much about Gwyneth Paltrow, because it was her voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely in some scenes. I don't know about all of them.
That was also what I wanted to bring up. Like, did that really happen? Did she really, I mean, if she wanted to be involved in the film and do that phone call, but, like, calling and being like, he's here, that was terrifying.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure.
Like,
I'd kind of think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
She was definitely heavily involved in the Me Too movement when it, like, kind of kicked off even more, following the article.
Right.
I'm presuming it was in relation to Harvey Weinstein, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, incredible to have had, like, actual people willing to be in it, because that is a very, very brave thing to do.
I have a fun fact that I don't really know how it's going to land, to be honest with you, but it's come into my head, so I just have to tell you. Of all the Oscar acceptance speeches, the number one thanked person in the world is God, and the number two is Harvey Weinstein.
Oh my God, that is an horrible
And
fact.
then number three is Bob Weinstein, Harvey and Bob.
What's Bob Weinstein up to now?
Yeah, good question.
Probably very angry.
Very complicit.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
Surely you would know. Like,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I think the fact that it's, like, only Harvey that's, like, like, of course, but, like, more people.
Yeah.
Like, this is awful. You know?
Yeah,
That scene-
definitely.
That scene with the financial guy from the company, and Megan goes to their house and says how many payouts were there, and the wife's just sit there like, what payouts? Like, she has no idea.
Yeah.
And they were complicit.
He completely knows what's going on.
It's really funny because I feel like there used to be, there's not, not that I'm aware of now, but when I first came into the industry, I feel like there was always rumblings about certain names. And I feel like that wouldn't happen now.
Yeah.
But it was like, got to be careful around, you know?
That was one thing, actually. When Jodi and Meghan were pulling everything together for this article, they had a letter come through from Harvey Weinstein. Or maybe this was even a public letter, I'm not sure. And at the start of it, he like goes on to apologise. But at the start, he's like, I grew up whenever he grew up, at a time where like this was acceptable and like things have changed, like it's a thing of the times kind of thing. And then he goes on to say, I know that's no excuse. It's like, if you said that at the start, you
then
obviously
you think
that that's an excuse.
Yeah, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. It's like,
What
well,
is
if it's not an
that?
excuse, don't say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like using it like you can't do that on yourself.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
Awful. And I feel like we're kind of, in a way, we're lucky to be in an industry that there is such a spotlight on. Mm-hmm. As much as like it's taken a lot of time, like this movement has happened, and things are improving. There's still like so much more to do, obviously, and like it obviously needs to be maintained because we know how things can just go backwards now.
Yeah.
But do you think that it's like this is changing in other industries and in other, like, has this had, are we lucky to be in the spotlight?
Like, there's so much to do still within our industry, but I think whenever I speak to any of my musician friends, I think the music industry is in a real bad way right now, and they always say like we need like a Me Too type thing because like we haven't had that and like it's bad, and I think there's a lot. I think it's still completely ingrained. Like, if we want to get to the root of it, like, it's just still completely ingrained in like our society to think that like women are some kind of like property, or and like powerful men can just get away with like whatever they want. And I think that's like the challenge of like our entire like social planet at this moment. So I think there's still a lot to do. But we're extremely fortunate that we've had this, and like as 3 women working in film now and creating our companies and our career, I think that like being on this side of this being on this side of the Me Too movement makes me feel incredibly fortunate and grateful.
Yeah. And incredibly like protective as well of people who are just starting out in the industry, that nothing like that happens to them.
We all love to work with people and bring them into this industry. Like, you know, we've got to know what this industry really is. And I think that like we've got to be like the gatekeepers, not the gatekeepers. We've got to be like the protectors of like these people.
Make sure it doesn't go backwards.
Yeah.
What do you think the budget is?
Ooh, that's really interesting. I don't know. How much was, like, I would say whatever Promising Young Woman was that like 6, 8, 12, 10?
I don't know.
I think Promising Young Women, I just feel like because they got the New York Times office and the cast as well.
For so low.
Promising Young Woman, they're saying 5 to 10 million estimated.
See, okay, I cheated. What did I said? I said like 6, 8, 10. Okay, I would say 6.
For this one?
Yeah, 6 M's.
I would say 12.
Oh my God. It's 32 million.
Oh God.
Oh.
Yeah, quite a bit more than what we thought.
Where did all that money go?
Well,
I mean,
I suppose it is like, it is all over the place. It's got a lot of people.
True.
It's in a big old office. It's got...
Did they pay the contributors for their stories?
Bloody hope so.
Don't know. Yeah, not sure.
That's really surprising.
Yeah.
That's really surprising.
I think that would be because there's so many people, there's so many places.
Yeah.
Maybe it was probably quite an expensive book.
Did the Times like fund any of it?
Not sure.
No, it was Plan B, Annapurna, something else.
Yeah.
Okay, Cool.
But I saw that on its like first, on its like early weekend at the box office, it didn't do very well
In America.
in America, which is a shame. And I think, because I think I'd read an article, I did read an article where it was like Harvey Weinstein was basically like sniggering at the fact that it hasn't done very well on its opening weekend, which like makes you.
How do they know that though? Did they hear him like in prison laughing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sniggering.
And do you know, like what I was saying earlier about like the tone and the style and I think there's something about this that's incredibly hard to handle, like because it's also about the film industry and it's a film and it's the survivors and like there's the producers and so it's like there's something about it that's just like incredibly hard to dissect and like create as like a movie. If you're just thinking about a movie that's about a real story, something like Spotlight, whatever, because I think the crux of it is because it's also about the film industry. I think that's probably the reason why it's like
Yeah.
Was there any?
Because they are actors who are playing themselves, but they're the real people. But then there's like character, you know?
Yeah,
it's like
it's
it's
a
a
mixed
bit like,
match.
whoa, how do we even handle this? I think
And they just thought, we'll do it in the plainest way
right.
that doesn't
Fair
have
enough.
any additional fluff.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know any like creative choices as they were and ahhing about?
Not entirely sure. I know that they, with the whole New York Times office setup, they wanted to make it really true to like how New York Times work as well.
Right.
So maybe they were just trying to make it very true and in that way kind of lost a bit of the style.
And I think that's also what I liked because like I did understand like why it's so hard to break a story like this. And like that's the thing, like this could have come out the other way around where you're going, New York Times, what the fuck? Like what is this? But then you actually go like, oh no, I get it. Like you can't just leak a story and then it just gets buried in the rest of the news. Like it's a story and it has to like compete with like a new album coming out or like, because that's how we consume media, you know? So I think that they did a really good job of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you watch Unorthodox?
Yeah, I loved it.
The
She's a
TV
director,
series?
isn't she?
Yeah, that's the director also directed that. I haven't seen it, but I just wondered if what the style
Shira
is in that.
Have you seen it?
No.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Oh,
it
really?
stylish?
I knew
Very
it was. but I
stylish.
never-
So maybe it was a choice then. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Really great.
Cool.
Great
Cool.
actor.
Yeah, Shira Haas, I think is her name.
Brilliant.
And then the writer had actually, so Rebecca Lenkiewicz had done Disobedience and Colette. Colette, sorry, Keira Knightley, and then Disobedience with Rachel McAdams and Rachel Wise. Is it both of them? Yeah.
Wow.
Disobedience.
Who was that, the writer?
Yeah, she did both of those. So, pretty cool team. So, I feel like this has been really good chat, but what were your final thoughts? What are your final thoughts?
For me, the way that having it told from Jodi and Megan's perspective on like what it takes to like unveil a story like this really answers like the question or like the statement that like I hear a lot, which is like, why didn't anyone say anything sooner? Why didn't and it's like there's so many reasons for that, but like I just implore anyone who like has any sort of question of like how something like this in any industry can like go undercover for so long, and it's like it just like shows you how everyone did speak up. They did all of the right thing, like how survivors, like how stories come out so much later after like the incident for like survivors, and how hard it is for someone to like really speak up and tell their story.
I think as well if you read an article and you read a book about a situation, and obviously there was a lot of press over this. There's like one thing that you can say about maybe dramatizing it, although I do feel like this was very respectful to not dramatize things. But visually, for someone to see, like the way that the film opens is such a perfect way to show what the outcome of his behavior was. When you see it and she's got this opportunity she's flourishing, and then she's completely broken. Like, that's what the repercussions are of this action. And I think it does give more of an impact to see that on a film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, for what I learned about our industry and about, like, this story that I didn't know before, I think that it's a really important film to watch for men and women, for men who are confused as to why things like this go on for so long, or think people are treated too harshly or whatever. Very important for women, like, a hugely important film to watch for all genders. It's an important film to watch. I don't even want to go back into, like, what I thought about it stylistically, because I don't think it's important, but I feel like I'm amongst friends and I wanted to express my opinion. But it's not important for this, and I do think it was a choice, and, like, I rate that.
I'm really glad that we've spoken about the context of us being in the industry and what our what control we have over this, or what's happened, or what part we have to play now and with people who are coming up in the industry, and what also is, like, left to be done. And speaking about other industries and maybe what should be done in those, we've touched upon it briefly. I think it's really interesting to, like, put that into personal context to appreciate this a little bit more.
Well, hopefully this film will help us progress. I don't know if I'm entirely hopeful.
We will see. I think
see.
this is a good, like, even though it's not quite where is favourable stylistically, I think it's a really good comparison to look at when you are telling a true story.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at, like, Blonde Spotlight, She Said, anything like that, like telling a contemporary-ish story, that how close do you need to be to it, how plain do you need to make it so it's not over-dramatized, I think is a good reference point.
Yeah,
Totally.
For a choice.
Well,
Yeah, such
thanks,
a good note
guys,
to end on.
for chats.
Thank you so much for bringing this film to Film Club, because it was a really, really important one to watch. And I think that it's been really great to chat with you guys about all of this stuff, unpack it.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. Thanks, girls.
Cool.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you are affected by any of the topics that we discussed, then please make sure you check the show notes of this episode, where we have provided some links for your support. Next week, we are going to be talking about Bones and All, which is by Luca Guadagnino. The film stars Taylor Russell and Timothée Chalamet, and it came out right at the end of last year. It's currently available in the cinemas, so go and watch it, and tune back in next week for more Frank Film Club.
This podcast was presented by Wrapped.